still in a sexual relationship all the time?
Yes, Your Honor.
How many months is that?
About 4 months.
You are the father. How are you feeling in this moment?
I had already accepted the situation when I knew he wasn't, but it's to actually know he's not mad, it just hurts a little bit more.
Mr. Campbell, you are not the father.
Ms. Hulsinger is suing Mr. Maye based on the paternity of her 2-year-old son. After signing the boy's birth certificate after he was born, the defendant has neglected his responsibilities to him as a father. Why did he sign the birth certificate if he didn't believe he fathered the child in question? Let's find answers together.
In the court for a DNA test, prove that the defendant is the father of your 2-year-old son, Gabriel. You say Mr. Maye has abandoned his responsibilities and he will get the truth today.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Maye, you claim you were pressured into signing the birth certificate and now you are stuck with a woman.
So does this mean the defendant did absolutely nothing for the child since he was born? Now, why would he choose to do that? Right now, that remains a mystery. Perhaps we can find out what went wrong if we knew how their relationship began.
So you're not doing anything for this child
No,
right
Your Honor.
now?
I'm out of the child's life right now.
The child's 2 years old?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you agree? Nothing, Ms. Hulsinger?
He hasn't done anything for my son at all. He missed his first steps, him calling his first words, which was dad.
Interesting. Now we get that they met off a chat line and they took things too far too soon. Well, if they had sex without protection, that makes him a strong father candidate, doesn't it?
How did it get?
The chatting and things start happening.
So then you matter? Obviously.
Yes, ma'am.
Take me to the night in question where all the chatting turned into paternity court material.
Your Honor, it was a late night. She was one of the young ladies who was on at the other end of the line and left me a message. I left her a message and...
As it appears, the chat line couple had sex without protection on their first night together. Whoa, how wild is that? So that means he could be the child's father after all. Now it would be interesting to know if she reaches out to him after she found out she was pregnant. And if she did, what was his response?
I called him and told him that it was a possibility of me having his child.
Months and months passed by, and then she just told me that she was pregnant.
Were you all still in a sexual relationship all
Yes,
the time?
Yes, Your Honor.
How many months is that?
About 4 months.
Okay. Mr. Maye claims initially accepted that the child could be his. If that was the case, why the sudden change of heart? But what makes things more interesting is the plaintiff's dispute of the defendant's claims of accepting the pregnancy. Let's find out what she has to say.
When she told me she was pregnant, I was going to be there for her.
And were you happy? Were you saying, oh, I'm going to have another child?
I was excited.
You're lying.
Why is he lying, Ms. Hulsinger? What was his response? Is he lying about that too?
He was like, are you serious? Are you...
Right now, there's a confusion about Mr. Maye's initially response and attitude towards finding out that the plaintiff might be pregnant by him. All right, let's say he accepted that he could be responsible for the pregnancy. At what point did he start having doubts? Learning this will give us a clearer picture of why they ended up here in the first place. And hearing his response will shock you.
Did you have doubts in the beginning, Mr. Maye?
No, I did not in the beginning.
Yes, you did.
Not in the beginning. She told me her word. I took her word for what it was. You know what I'm saying? So
I don't.
That's not true.
That's not true.
At what point did you say to yourself, I may not be the only possible father here?
Whoa, did Ms. Hulsinger really hide behind the refrigerator? If she did, the defendant's doubts will be understandable because that only means one thing. He isn't the only candidate for the biological father trophy. It would be interesting to hear her admit she did and why she had to.
Were you hiding behind the refrigerator, Ms. Hulsinger?
Yes, ma'am, I was because
in your own house?
Yes, ma'am, because this man would not leave me alone. And I did not want to deal with him. And he would just pop up all the time, and I just didn't want to deal with that.
Well, that's not all. Mr. Maye has more to say about his doubts. It just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? It would be interesting to hear more of what he has to say. The thing is, if you were on Ms. Hulsinger's side from the beginning, you would think of switching sides once you hear what the defendant has to say next.
And though, Your Honor.
Oh, what else?
I mean, I'm not too heavy of a sleeper, so at the time, I'm spending the night with her. I'm seeing messages pop up on the phone. That led me to doubt too. Not only the backdoor situation, but just text messages, you know what I mean? Things I would hear on the streets. And
Ms. Hulsinger is ready to argue her way out of Mr. Maye's accusations. But let's face the truth. Why did she hide behind the refrigerator on that faithful day? What has she got to say about that? Regardless of her explanations, it's understandable that the defendant's doubts originated from those awkward situations he uncovered.
I wasn't even in a relationship, so why would I have to hide somebody's
Why was she hiding
name and a
herself,
number?
Your Honor? Why was she hiding herself from when the dude knocked on the back door? She wasn't.
Because he was my stalker.
Okay, so bottom line is you were hearing rumors, you saw messages on her phone.
Guys knocking at the back door, Your Honor.
So we get that Mr. Maye discovered a lot of hurtful things about Ms. Hulsinger, which is enough to make any man doubt paternity. But how was he able to put himself together to be there on the day of the child's delivery? Because you would have to force a man to appear in the hospital, let alone sign the birth certificate after such discoveries.
So when you actually went into labor?
Yes, ma'am, he wasn't there for me. My family member actually had to go and get him so he could come up there and see my son.
Oh, so they went to go get him.
And I
Yes,
had
ma'am.
my doubt. I had my doubts. That's why I wasn't willing to.
Due to the wild mysteries in their relationship, it's hard to tell if Mr. Maye indeed fathered Ms. Hulsinger's son, because he had sex with her countless times without protection. Well, the only way to uncover the truth is by hearing the DNA test results.
Mr. Maye, you are the father. Good news.
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
He has a great father.
Listen,
I can't tell.
listen, it's amazing when I think about you all saying you just were feeling lonely and didn't know what to do with yourself, so you just called a chat line.
Ms. Martinez appears before the judge claiming that Mr. Hernandez has denied paternity for not one, but both of her children. Now she wants a DNA test for both kids and child support. However, the defendant isn't ready to bulge and is ready to go to whatever length to prove he didn't father any of the kids in question.
Martinez, you say your family is torn apart since the defendant has denied both of your children, 4-year-old Richard II and 3-year-old Renee. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
You have petitioned the court for a DNA test to prove the truth and hope.
One of the kids is 4 years old while the other is 3. It would be interesting to know what Mr. Hernandez has done to cater for them since they were born, but it would be absurd if he did nothing for them just because he had doubts without substantial proof that they are not his. Let's find out if he did.
That the results will save your relationship.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hernandez, you say you were suckered into claiming the plaintiff's 2 children and can't trust anything she's said. You're currently behind more than $6,000 in child support and
So, according to the plaintiff's statement, the defendant did absolutely nothing for the kids besides $200 clothing. How true is that? Well, let's hear him defend himself.
refuse to care for either child until it is proven.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Ms. Hernandez, what has he done for the children?
Absolutely nothing until about 3 weeks ago. He did get them at least $200 worth of clothing, but other than that, that's all he's done their whole life.
That's a lie, Your Honor.
Whatever his issues are with their mother, he should have done more for the kids. You can only imagine how this has affected the kids. As we all know, it's really traumatic for kids to grow up without their father's love and support. Although he claims he gave his alleged kids his best, their mother states otherwise. Well, men need to understand this. Until it's proven that the kid isn't yours, it's not okay to neglect your responsibilities.
My kids suffer. Every night when I put them to bed, they cry asking where he's at. He doesn't call to check on them, to even get them on the phone and say, can I talk to them? Can I see how they're
That's
doing?
a lie, Your Honor.
He does nothing.
I try as much as I can, but it's hard to try to do that when I don't know if they're mine for sure.
It's obvious that there's a wild mystery about the plaintiff's relationship with the defendant. But what could be the cause of that? Perhaps we will get a better picture if we knew how their relationship started, and if there was genuine love between them.
Obviously, the relationship is in trouble. How did this start?
We first met, she was trying to get all over me or whatever from the beginning, but I ignored her.
Were you interested in having a relationship with him at that point?
Relations, but not a relationship.
Okay. And what were your intentions, Mr. Hernandez?
Although it wasn't so serious from the beginning, their love grew. But the defendant makes serious allegations about the plaintiff that would suggest that she wasn't all in with him. Now, what are those allegations? And they enough for him to doubt the paternity of his 2 kids?
Being serious, I felt like it was, and I don't know, I wanted to be with her. All of a sudden, I find out she's doing other things with my friends and stuff.
What a minute. She did what with who? Apparently, Mr. Hernandez has a solid reason for doubting paternity, but those are his words. It would be interesting to hear what she has to say about his strong allegations.
Doing other things like
It's a one incident he's talking about, Your Honor. It was a one-time thing. Me and his friend had messed around.
See? You see the stuff that
wow.
Wow! A one-time stuff? Really, Ms. Martinez? Now, how do you not expect him to doubt paternity? After his discoveries, it is mysteriously weird that he continue his relationship with her. As it turns out, the romantic feeling wasn't mutual. It was one-sided.
You stayed with her.
Yes. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I mean,
And
it's
he
been
can't
so long
say that
now.
because even prior to that, I was always told him I didn't want to be in a relationship. He forced it. He was always like, come on, please be with me. I don't know why you don't want to be with me.
That's
and I
a
told him
lie.
I wanted to be single because I wasn't ready to be tied down with one person. So every time I would have,
That's a lie.
relationships with other people, I would tell him.
She sleeps with men.
I
my
would tell him
friends,
and I
Your
would
Honor.
say, hey, I did have sex with somebody the night before or whatever.
Apparently, the plaintiff was brutally honest with the defendant about her feelings, but he was so blinded by his feelings for her that he didn't care. Come to think of it, if she didn't feel anything for him like she claimed, she shouldn't have been around him that much.
I felt like it was something else other than that. I didn't.
It sounds like she's being brutally honest throughout this, but you're not wanting to hear it.
If she didn't want to be with me, she didn't like me. Well, why would she still come to
I
my
did
house?
have feelings for
a
him,
2-hour
but
drive
I was not
on the
ready
bus
to be
for
committed.
what?
I liked hanging out with him. He was more like my best friend when we first. I was going through a lot of things.
Well, we're not here for their weird relationship drama, even though we needed to understand how their relationship started and how serious it's been. Now, let's get back to the paternity case. The main thing right now is to find out if Ms. Martinez had sex with someone else other than Mr. Hernandez during the window of conception.
Is that true, Ms. Martinez? Were
Yes,
you
it is.
intimate with another man a
Yes,
few
Your
weeks
Honor.
before you told him you were pregnant?
Yes, I did have intercourse with him 3 times and unprotected that night. And I told him about it. He still wanted to be with me.
She lied about it.
I did.
First
I
of all,
did.
she said
I
that
did
it
tell
was
him that we did it.
protected.
The fact that they had a serious relationship while the plaintiff had multiple sex partners remains a wild mystery. But hey, it is what it is. Let's just get the FNA test results and get it over it.
Mr. Hernandez, you are his father. Moving on. In this particular case, your doubt was really about the fact that she had this one-night stand with the person you knew.
Today's case is one filled with wild mysteries beyond your imagination. Mr. Thompson is seriously in need of a paternity test to determine if his wife's newborn baby is indeed his biological son. The fate of their marriage hangs delicately on the outcome of the result. Once again, the stakes are very high.
Mr. Thompson, you are in court today in hopes of saving your 11-year marriage. Your wife has a newborn 4-month-old Micah Pate Thompson, who you hope is your baby, but say your doubts are overwhelming. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Firstly, we need to understand the status of the relationship between the plaintiff and the defendant presently. As you would expect, their current status is rocky, and that's why they are in court today. But Mr. Thompson's testimony will definitely make you scratch your head in surprise.
The current status of our relationship is it's rocky. We haven't had sex probably in about 7-8 months. And it's just she don't like to cook, she don't like to clean, she don't like to work. So it's a lot going on other than Micah. So it's.
Although the plaintiff isn't sure if he fathered the child, he clearly has a special relationship with him. But will the outcome of the DNA test change how he feels about him? Let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
Want this baby to be your biological child, but you truly doubt.
I would love for him to be my son. If he wasn't mine, I don't know if I could raise another man's child. But with everything going on and the connection that me and Micah has together.
Regardless of their present rocky situation, there's clearly lots of love in this beautiful family. But the wild mystery remains. Why are they here today? It all started with a shameful discovery.
We got married. I got married in a jogging suit. We had a t-shirt.
I had t-shirt, jeans, and Timberlands on, and I was drunk. Yeah, I was kind of toasted.
It sounds like it was an interesting and entertaining day.
Oh, there's more. This isn't the first time the couple would take a DNA test for their child. But how can this be a norm if they were so in love with each other and trust one another? Well, at this point, it still remains a mystery.
I had to get a DNA test on my first two boys by her. We married, but every time while we in a marriage,
I was going to ask the same question.
I don't understand.
What happened in this relationship?
Honestly, Your Honor, I think when we first got married, we really weren't ready to be married.
Apparently, Mr. Thompson left his wife at some point because they clearly weren't aren't ready for something as serious as marriage. Here comes the crazy part. While the plaintiff was away, he broke his marital vows. But the funny thing is this, he expected her to stay loyal to the cause. How hilarious is that?
When I left, she said she was gonna work on herself. Me and her had ample
While he was
conversations
with somebody else.
about her working on herself. She was working on herself because she deleted me off social media. I found out she started adding all these other dudes to her social media page.
Because you were gone. You were living with somebody else.
Now at this point, you would think they are planning to get a divorce. But guess what? Someone doesn't see that as an option, while the other person does. Crazy, right? Well, you haven't heard it all.
Were you all planning to get a divorce?
Nah.
Yes.
So you just gonna go move in with somebody else and still think you're gonna be married?
When I said something about a divorce, she didn't want a divorce.
As soon as he left and I found out that he was staying with somebody else and they were supposed to be in a relationship, I printed up the divorce papers myself.
For something that started off so beautiful, it's unfortunate that they couldn't make things work while they could. Perhaps they still can. After his adventures outside his marriage, the plaintiff came back home to make things work again. But the defendant had other plans. And boy, can you blame her for that?
When I came back, we was under understanding that I was gonna come back and we was gonna work on our marriage. She told me that she was going to Atlanta for a job interview. I said, what job interview you going to? And she named a couple jobs off and I said, okay. So me being me in that conversation, when me and her got done talking, I got on the phone with my mother and I was like, she not going to no Atlanta for no job interview. She going to Atlanta to do what she was gonna do.
What's more crazy is this. That wasn't the only time the defendant took a page from her husband's playbook, but this time around the plaintiff did a little investigation, and you probably guessed what he discovered, but you can't tell for sure unless you hear it from him.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And then when do you find out you're pregnant?
Hold on, she went back to Atlanta 2 weeks later.
For a follow-up interview?
Yeah, she said a second interview. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to leave nothing out because I don't want anybody to say.
I know that's right. You go ahead and prove your case, Mr. Thompson.
Not denying her husband allegations, Ms. claims all she did was just payback for his atrocities. As it turns out, Mr. Thompson left out his wrongdoings in his testimony, but focused on exposing hers. Nah, it doesn't work that way in court, Mr. Thompson. The whole truth has to come out today.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true, Your Honor, but he skips over all the stuff that he did. Besides the going back and forth all summer between me and the other girl, and then moving all the way to Alabama with the girl and leaving me with the kid.
Now we know for sure that the cheating wasn't one-sided. It went both ways. Well, that's a case for a marital court. Right here in this moment, all that matters is the paternity of the little baby they came to court for. So let's hear Judge Lake read out the results.
Mr. Thompson, you are not the father. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, sir. How are you feeling in this moment?
I had already accepted the situation when I knew he wasn't, but it's to actually know he's not mad, it just hurts a little bit more.
There are lots of paternity cases with wild mysteries, but this one comes in another dimension. Ms. Anthony claims her relationship with Mr. Pourciau wasn't long-term, but it led to her getting pregnant by him. Today, they are both in court to prove whether or not he's the child's biological father.
You claim you had a short-term relationship with the defendant, Mr. Pourciau, who was initially excited when you told him you were pregnant. But now you are furious he is denying your 8-month-old son Matt. Is that correct?
Yes.
Fascinatingly, the defendant alleges that the kid isn't his, and he's saying this because the plaintiff confessed to some things she was involved in during the window of conception. How true is that? Well, according to him, their relationship was never a serious one, and she has an agenda for trying to pin the child on him.
Mr. Pourciau, you say you've never taken Ms. Anthony seriously, and she herself confessed to sleeping with other men during the time of conception. You believe the only reason Ms. Anthony is pinning her child on you is because you married someone else. Is that correct?
The thing is this, as long as they had unprotected sex, there's a great possibility that the kid might be Mr. Pourciau's biological son. With that in mind, he must have been there for the child one way or the other. Let's find out if he did.
So, Ms. Anthony, what has Mr. Pourciau done for your child?
Not a damn thing, Your Honor. Nothing, not a diapers, not wipes, not formula.
Apparently, he was never there for the child, not even for a single time. Well, since they never took a DNA test, he should have thought of the possibility that the kid could be his and did his bit at least till everything was certain. What does he have to say about that?
That's
Not
only
anything.
because she told me that the child wasn't
I'm getting to
mine.
that. I did tell him that the child was not his, but Your Honor, he was not in a very good place in his life. He was partying, and I was partying too, but once I found out I was pregnant, I put all those things aside and did what I had to.
To be fair to Mr. Pourciau, Ms. Anthony did admit that she initially told him the baby wasn't his. So why come out now with claims that the baby belongs to him? It just makes no sense.
But
Your
she
Honor.
told me that I wasn't the father.
Later on, I
Told
did
me
tell her you
that
wasn't the father.
her ex-boyfriend was the father, that she was pregnant before she met me.
And now you say he's denying the baby. But
because-
you admit to telling him he wasn't the father.
Yes, ma'am, I did, and I understand that was me being.
In such cases, it's always sensible to understand the nature of the relationship before going deep into the main case, in the sense that we need to know how serious the relationship was. And hearing them talk about it, it doesn't seem like what you would call a romantic relationship, although there were romantic activities involved.
I was sitting at the bus stop, and he walked up to me and asked me about one of my tattoos, and we just clicked from there. We were amazing when we were together. We didn't fight very much. We never argued. And then I went away for a little while, and it just got...
We had mainly a party relationship, to be honest with you.
Now, with that out of the way, the next thing we need to know if their sexual relationship involved the use of protection. If it did involve protection, then there will be no case at all. It would be fascinating to know their answers to such a question.
Were you using protection?
No, Your Honor, we were not. And he was there, so that's why I'm mainly upset. You were there for the 25 minutes of pleasure. Well, it's been 9 months. It's been 9 months, and I bought every diaper.
We get that Mr. Pourciau claims he would have been there for the child if he was informed that the child could be his from the beginning, but the plaintiff alleges that she tried reaching him. And to make things more interesting, she came to court with proof to back her claims.
There was
Excuse
a
me.
possibility that it was mine in the beginning. I would have been around.
I've tried to contact him on multiple occasions. I have text messages right here
I'd like to see
that
that.
I've attempted to, and that's from his spouse. That's not from him because he blocks me and doesn't.
Okay.
Now, let's try to understand the situation better. Did Miss Anthony tell the defendant right after she took the pregnancy test that he wasn't responsible for it or not? Her answer would determine if Mr. Pourciau really had the intention to take responsibility from the onset.
At some point, you figure out you're pregnant. You take a test and he's with you.
Yes.
But when you took the test and it came back positive, you immediately told him you're not father?
Oh no, not immediately.
All right, tell me what happened then.
We went to bed that night, and I laid there all night and was like, I can't do this. My son deserves better, or my child, at the point I didn't know it was a boy, but my child deserves better than this. I don't know what to do.
In terms of the window of conception, Mr. Pourciau isn't sure if he had sex with Ms. Anthony during that period. He doesn't even know what it means. But guess what? She claims he did. Also, she presented what she claims to be proof that he did. How convenient of her.
Were you having sex with Ms. Anthony during the window of conception, Mr. Pourciau?
I don't know what the window of conception was, so honestly, I don't have an answer for that, Your Honor.
Okay, that's
Yes,
fair.
he was. I have pictures with dates on them right
I'd
here.
like to see that, please. Jerome, will you hand me her evidence?
And that was
Just when you thought she was getting the upper hand, the defendant reveals another truth. His claims debunks her entire alleged proof about having sex with him during the window of conception. Now this is getting really interesting.
After she told me that she was pregnant with another man's child and I wasn't the father, I was trying to stay around.
No, those
to
were
help her
before,
take
honey. Don't you
care
sit there
of
and
the
lie. That
child.
April
I offered
8th and the
to
April
help
4th
her.
were before. That middle one was after.
Because I met
two were
you
before.
in late March, no, actually late February, and you supposedly got pregnant early March.
At some point, the plaintiff's claims made sense, but not so much when the defendant dropped his claims like a bomb. In the end, we still can't get to the bottom of the child's paternity. Well, that's why they took the DNA test, so let's get to that.
Mr. Pourciau, you are the father. That's the first time I've seen you smile today, Mr. Pourciau.
This is all he really ever wanted, is to have a child of his own, and specifically a son. So on his end and on my end, basically makes the child my stepchild.
It does.
It does.
I work.
So that means
I make decent money, and
The reason Mr. Campbell mysteriously walked out on his ex-wife and his alleged son over 3 decades ago still remains a mystery. But today, his ex-wife, Ms. Hauser, is charging him to court to confirm the paternity of her son, Mr. Michael. This is a serious case because the test result could increase the chance of finding a solution to Mr. Michael's medical condition.
You claim your ex-husband unexpectedly walked out on you when your son, Michael Campbell, was 5 months old. You say your son has had medical problems since he was a child, and you have petitioned the court for a DNA test in order to hopefully find a solution.
The defendant, however, alleges he didn't father the plaintiff's son, and today he's in court to confirm his claims. Well, they should have done this a long time ago, if not for anything, but for the sake of the unwell young man.
Mr. Campbell, you say you never believed the plaintiff's son belonged to you, and today's result will prove your case and clear your name. Is that correct?
Although Mr. Campbell is hell-bent on not accepting Mr. Michael as his son, Ms. Hauser is more than sure that he fathered her son. Perhaps her explanation will sound convincing enough to make us believe her. However, they won't be enough to prove that the defendant is indeed her son's biological father.
So, Ms. Hauser, how positive are you that the defendant is your son's father?
100%, Your Honor.
You are. Explain.
Mr. Campbell and I met when I was a junior and he was a senior in high school. And what ended up happening was mid to late July, early August, I became pregnant.
As it turns out, the ex-lovers ran away and got married against Mr. Campbell's parents' wishes. But the weird mystery is this: if the defendant never thought he was responsible for the pregnancy, why did run away and get married to her? Thinking it through, it doesn't make sense that any man would do that for a woman carrying a child that isn't his. He literally threw his life away when he made that decision, and it couldn't have been for nothing.
So you made the decision, Mr. Campbell, to elope with Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
You knew she was pregnant, and your family, they were not fond of this union.
My father wasn't, no.
And so you're pregnant,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
get married.
Interestingly, Ms. Hauser states some claims that rather suggests that Mr. Campbell never doubted Mr. Michael's paternity. According to her, after they got divorced, he and his family made some moves that cements her claim of him being her son's biological father. If that's the case, why is the defendant denying paternity?
Ms. Hauser, you seem surprised.
Oh, very surprised. If Mr. Campbell was not Michael's father, why did he sign the birth certificate? Why, when we got divorced, did Mr. Campbell and his family try to get custody?
There are so many mysteries in this case. As of yet, we still don't understand why Mr. Campbell married Ms. Hauser if he claims he didn't believe the child was his. He really needs to make the court understand why he chose to be with her, even though he had doubts.
And this, you're saying you knew soon as when you married her that this wasn't your child.
Yes, ma'am.
So why marry a woman who's pregnant with another man's child and you don't believe it? There's any possibility that it's yours?
She was my first love, and
Another interesting thing is this. Ms. Hauser makes a strong claim when asked about the possibility of her being with another man around the time the child was conceived. Finally, Mr. Campbell states his reasons for doubting the child's paternity, and his reasons made a bit of sense.
Other possibilities?
No, ma'am, there is not.
So,
Your Honor.
Mr. Campbell, I'd like to understand your doubt. Why do you doubt?
well, when Peggy and I were together, we broke up right after I graduated, before summer had started, and we didn't get back together until August of 1980.
However, the plaintiff does not agree with the defendant's claims. What's more is that she never knew he had doubts about their son's paternity all the years he left them. Not until a few years ago when she had to contact him. How weird is that?
See it that way, Ms. Hauser?
No, Your
How
Honor,
do
I
you
don't.
remember it?
I just don't understand how Mr. Campbell can say that we were broke up. We were not broke up. We were together.
When was the first time you heard he had doubts? Because he married you and...
4 years ago. Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Hauser claims she never cheated on her ex-husband, but we can't help but wonder why they got divorced. And her explanation sounds like one hell of a misunderstanding. According to her story, Mr. Campbell thought she cheated on him when she was literally doing nothing of such. However, the defendant has an entirely different but believable story to tell.
Your Campbell were married.
Yes, ma'am.
And Michael is born. Where does the relationship go wrong? How do you end up divorced?
The relationship, Your Honor, went bad when I joined Mr. Campbell in South Carolina while he was enlisted. And then when Michael was 4 months old.
What a weirdly mysterious case it's been. I'm sure you've exhausted your pack of popcorn watching this, and I'm sorry to end your entertainment. But it's time to hear the DNA test result.
Mr. Campbell, you are not the father.
Oh my.
Well, Ms. Hauser, 35 years. You were so certain that there was no other person